I'll ask member for Abbotsford West to lead the House in prayer or reflection.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this new day. Thank you for travel safety during our very busy summer, with many miles traveled across this province by many members in this House. We do not take that for granted. We are grateful to be back in the legislature, so bless our work. Grant us wisdom, guide our discussions and decisions in this fall session. Inspire us all with creative solutions to complex issues. Lord, I bring before you this morning the member from Victoria Beacon Hill and the member from South Surrey. We ask you for continued healing in their bodies. Please, Heavenly Father, restore them to their families and to this House. Also, we ask for your ongoing comfort for the Peter Ford family and his loved ones and friends, a servant to this House. Lord, we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Welcome back, everyone. So, introduction by members. Madam Clerk.
Introduction of bills. Private members' time.
Member for Kelowna Mission.
Starting a business is like bringing a child into the world. It's an act of hope, a leap of faith that tomorrow can be better than today. It brings sleepless nights and endless bills, but faith is rewarded, hard work pays, and we build a better life for the next generation. It's the Canadian dream. October is Small Business Month in BC, a time to recognize the vital role of small and medium-sized enterprises, which account for 57% of private sector jobs in BC. They fuel innovation, create opportunity, and build strong communities. But today, too many are losing that hope. We're facing a crisis of confidence in the spirit of enterprise. Drop by drop, talent and capital are flowing away. Business confidence is the lowest in Canada. Youth unemployment is at a generational high. 70,000 people left BC last year, and half our young people are considering leaving. We're losing the next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs. Behind every statistic are people, because small business is people and families. It's people like Mark at Flashpoints Tattoo in Rutland, whose shop was damaged last week by smoke and water and fire suppressant after a fire accidentally started by unhoused people. It's Kim, whose team arrived one morning to a body outside their dental clinic, the police lights flashing through the window as they decided whether to cancel appointments that day. It's Daryl from Crossroads Brewing in Prince George, burned down in an arson by a prolific offender hours after we hosted a public safety town hall across the street. 50 people lost their jobs that night. They won't rebuild until the district is safe again. I know firsthand the white-knuckle struggle of small business, but I've never seen it like this. In our decimated downtowns, you don't just see frustration or exhaustion in people's eyes, you see trauma and a loss of hope. These small business people are watching years of sweat and sacrifice slip away as vandalism and violence kill their dreams. This didn't happen by accident. It wasn't just tariffs or COVID or global forces. It was choices by this government that made life harder for small business. Red tape, tax hikes, fiscal chaos, and stubborn ideological moves like drug decriminalization, which even the Premier now finally admits has had, quote, really unhappy consequences. I encourage the Premier to go meet the shopkeepers, servers, and tradespeople who have held on through it all and tell them that he is proud of what he's done, to see if they'll accept his mumbled excuses. He can explain why he allowed Small Business BC to go bankrupt during the election, why he defunded the BC Economic Development Association and the Northern Innovation Network, why he botched the Securing Small Business rebate, why he shut down the Small Business Roundtable and ignored the people who create jobs. He can explain why he decriminalized hard drugs without a serious plan, leaving people without control of their lives, and prolific offenders to degrade themselves while they destroy our business districts. Enough excuses. Take accountability, Premier, or step down and get out of the way. Because sooner or later, change is coming. Alongside the hurt our business community feels, something else remains. The spark that built this province, the ecstasy of landing that first customer, the pride of hiring that first employee, the joy of watching an idea grow into something real. That spirit of enterprise built British Columbia, and it can rebuild it again once this failed government is gone. But only if we choose hope over managing decline, only if we rebuild a culture where every small business is treated as the green shoot of hope it truly is. To the business people and investors, I'm asking you to be strong. If you lose hope, we all fail. If you give up, our economy falters. You carry more than your own dreams. You carry the fate of your employees, your families, your communities, and your province. Keep the faith. Keep hope alive. Help is on the way. Don't give up on BC, because we're not giving up on you.
Recognizing the member for North Vancouver Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking on the lands of the Coast Salish people, the Lekwungen here in Victoria, known as the Songhees and Esquimalt, and the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh nations, where I call home in North Vancouver. I am deeply grateful for the opportunities I continue to have in learning about the cultures, traditions, and practices that have been here for a millennia. October also marks Breast Cancer Awareness Month, a time when we come together to honour the strength of survivors, support those currently facing breast cancer, and remember the lives lost to this disease. It is also a time to renew our commitment to prevention, early detection, and equitable access to care. Breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer among women in British Columbia. Each year, more than 4,000 women and up to 30 men in our province receive this life-altering diagnosis. About 1 in every 8 women will develop breast cancer in her lifetime. Behind every statistic is a person whose life has been changed by breast cancer. But there is hope. Thanks to advancement in research, treatment, and early detection, survival rates have improved dramatically. In fact, when breast cancer is caught early, the 5-year survival rate is close to 90%. That's why awareness and access to screening is so critical. So please, when it's time to get your mammogram, just book it and get it done. For many, understanding your breast density can also be a vital part of that awareness. Dense breast tissue not only increases cancer risk, it can make it harder to detect cancer through standard mammograms, making personalized screening even more important. BC was the first province to share breast density results with all mammogram screening clients. This past year, a new study came out of UBC revealing that ultrasound screening significantly improves breast cancer detection in women with dense breasts, identifying twice as many cancers as previously estimated. Recognizing the clear benefits, British Columbia is one of the few provinces in British Columbia that provides publicly funded supplemental ultrasounds for women with category C and D dense breasts, a service that should be available in all provinces. We also recognize the importance of inclusive care. Breast cancer affects people of all genders, and disparities in outcomes persist, particularly for Black women, Indigenous women, and those in rural or underserved communities. This month is not just about wearing pink. It's about taking action. It's about booking that mammogram, sharing information with loved ones, supporting research, and standing with those who are fighting this disease. Our government is taking action to expand cancer care across the province. We're investing in new cancer centres in Kamloops, Nanaimo, and Surrey, and expanding services in existing facilities. These investments will mean more access to diagnostics, treatments, and support closer to home. We're also making it easier for people to get the care they need by increasing access to family doctors. Through new payment models and support for team-based care, more physicians are choosing to practice in BC, and more patients are being connected to primary care, which is especially important for early detection and ongoing support for those facing cancer. One of the most inspiring symbols of survivorship and strength in our province is the dragon boat community. Breast cancer survivors dragon boating is an international movement inspired by the research of Canadian sports medicine specialist Don McKenzie. Survivors of breast cancer come together to paddle dragon boats to the benefit of their physical health and social well-being. Dragon boating is a non-weight-bearing upper body sport which makes it a safe and effective way for survivors to regain strength and mobility. In my community, we have the wonderful North Shore Dragon Busters, a dragon boat team made up entirely of breast cancer survivors. Their motto, courage, strength, power, reflects the spirit of their journey. Through the physical and emotional benefits of paddling, they show that life after a diagnosis can be active, joyful, and full of community. Their participation in local and international regattas sends a powerful message. There is hope and there is life after breast cancer. Together, we can build a future where breast cancer is no longer a life-threatening diagnosis, but a challenge we will meet with compassion, innovation, and unwavering support. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Kamloops North Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. British Columbia's forest industry is in crisis, and it didn't happen by accident. For generations, forestry has been the backbone of our provincial economy, supporting families, communities, and small businesses from the Kootenays to the Cariboo, from Prince George to Vancouver Island. But today, sawmills are shutting down, families are being forced to move, and once thriving towns are struggling to survive. As a BC Conservative MLA, I believe this crisis is a direct result of a failed government policy, overregulation, and a lack of respect for the people who actually work in our forests. At one time, forestry provided more than 100,000 full-time, good-paying jobs in this province. Today, that number has been cut nearly in half. Millions of mills in communities such as Mackenzie, Chetwynd, and Houston have now been closed their doors because there's not enough timber available to harvest. But the truth is, it's not just the lack of trees, Madam Speaker. It's a lack of political will. Bureaucratic tape, endless studies, and ever-changing environmental regulations have made it nearly impossible for industry to plan for the future. When government policies shift faster than the growth of a spruce tree, investment dries up and workers pay the price. The crisis has hit rural BC the hardest. Forest towns don't ask for much. They just want their fair shot to earn a living from the land that they've cared for generations. Yet too often decisions are made in downtown Vancouver, Victoria, who people have never set foot in a logging camp or seen a mill run. And these policies, like rushed old growth deferrals and new tenure restrictions, are destroying the economic backbone of rural communities. The people of BC deserve a better than sacrificing jobs in the name of political virtue. That doesn't mean we ignore environmental responsibility. Far from it. BC's forest industry and workers have some of the best stewards of the land anywhere in the world. They replant every tree that they harvest, follow strict environmental regulations, and understand that a healthy forest is essential for both our economy and our environment. But a real sustainability means balance. It means protecting ecosystems as well as protecting livelihoods and jobs. It means trusting local expertise, working with Indigenous nations, and making science-based decisions, not political ones. The BC Conservative vision for forestry is about getting back to common sense. We need to open access to sustainable timber, invest in modern mills and value-added manufacturing, and cut the bureaucratic waste that strangles innovation in this province. We must keep more logs in BC to create local jobs and ensure communities share in the benefits of their resources between them. Forestry built this province, and with the right leadership, we can build it too. BC forest crisis is not inevitable. It's a result of choices. With courage, accountability, and respect for rural British Columbians, we can turn this crisis around and restore forestry as the proud, thriving industry it's always meant to be. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the member for Esquimalt Colwood.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're gathered today on the traditional and unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, today known as Songhees and the Coast Epsom First Nations. So, October is Women's History Month. So I thought this is an opportunity to reflect on the contributions and achievements of women throughout history, including those serving right here within the BC Legislature. We're going to go back a little bit to 1918. During the 14th session of this Parliament, Mary Ellen Smith became the first woman elected to the Legislature. She was elected in a by-election in Vancouver City, for the city of Vancouver as an independent and later joined by the Liberal Party. Fun fact, the MLA before her was actually her husband. In 1921, she was appointed to cabinet, becoming the first woman in the British Empire to actually hold that position. She then served as a minister without portfolio from March 24th to November 19th. Mary Ellen Smith also became the first woman in the British Empire to preside over parliamentary proceedings from the Speaker's chair. On February 22nd, 1928, with the Deputy Speaker absent, she was invited to preside over the budget debate. Members respectfully addressed her as Madam Speaker, a title that continues to be used throughout the Commonwealth today. So we're going to fast forward a little bit to 1950. Nancy Hodge became the first woman elected as a Speaker of this House, and in 1953, the first woman appointed to the Senate of Canada, right here from our proud province of British Columbia. In 1972, Rosemary became the first Black woman elected in the BC Legislature. Upon her election, she said, "We must open the doors, we must see to it they remain open, so that others can pass through them." That statement continues to inspire many of us here today. In 1975, Grace McCarthy became the first woman in Canada to actually serve as a Deputy Premier. In 1991, Rita Johnson became the first woman in Canada to serve as a Premier in the province of British Columbia. The same year, we also had our first Indo-Canadian woman elected to this House, and Judy, and I'm trying to learn how to pronounce names better, Tabitha, thank you. And she was also the first woman to give birth in office, which is, as we all know in this House, holds a special place to my heart due to my little one getting to serve here as well. In 1996, British Columbia elected Ida Chong and Jenny Kwan, the first Chinese-Canadian women to serve as a member of the Legislative Assembly. Fun fact, they were both actually elected the same year, in 1996. And in 1998, Jenny Kwan became the first Chinese-Canadian cabinet minister. In 2011, for some of our friends, the opposition on this side of the House, a well-known woman, Shirley Bond, became the first woman to actually serve as the Attorney General of British Columbia. Linda Reid, who served from 1991 to 2020, holds the distinction of being the longest-serving woman MLA in the history of British Columbia. A woman who's near and dear to my heart, Carol James, served as the first woman to lead the official opposition. From 2005 to 2011, she was the first woman of Métis descent elected to the legislature. In 2009, our very own MLA from Vancouver, Kensington, became the first Filipino woman of heritage descent elected to the legislature. In that same year, Christy Clark also became the first woman in British Columbia to be elected a premier twice. Since I'm running out of time, I will cut this short. There's no shortage of history of strong women in British Columbia running for our provincial government. In 2024, British Columbia elected a record 94 women to the legislative of British Columbia, the highest number in our history, and some of the youngest to be elected. It took 107 years to reach this milestone. While this progress is worth celebrating, there does remain much work to do. Women in politics continue to face significant challenges, including verbal aggression, online harassment, threats to personal safety. These experiences discourage women from entering and remaining in public life. All members of this House, regardless of political affiliation, have a responsibility to call out the behavior when it occurs. This truly is a nonpartisan issue. It's about ensuring the safety and dignity and equality of all who serve in the community throughout public office. This Women's History Month, let us honor those who came before us, support those who serve, and commit to lifting women up who lead to today. And I think since this is, again, the biggest group of women who have ever been elected into this House, that we all have extremely a key part to do, not just for ourselves, but the future women who want to run within government. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the member for Prince George Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, as we gather in this chamber, thousands of British Columbians are on their way to the legislature. They'll be standing on the lawn, demanding fairness, respect, and action from their government. The BCGEU strike is now in its 6th week, one of the longest in British Columbia's entire history. We're also in a season of labor disruption in the public sector right now, as even more public sector unions are entering bargaining in the coming weeks. And this is a crisis of disruption that is of the government's own making. After speaking with teachers, with nurses, and countless other public sector workers, one message is clear. People have had enough. Enough of being ignored. Enough of broken promises. Enough of a government that says one thing and does another. Madam Speaker, this government has broken public services through years of economic mismanagement, structural deficits, and runaway debt, and now it's public sector workers that are paying the price. Since 2017, management overhead in the public service has increased by 45%. This is something that even the BCGEU has been vocally raising concerns with. Instead of supporting the front lines, so classrooms, hospitals, and community programs, this government has ballooned bureaucracy while neglecting workers who keep this province running. Now the consequences are being felt everywhere. Strikes are escalating in my riding in Prince George Mackenzie and indeed across the province. Services are collapsing, and it's everyday British Columbians that are now caught in the middle of this dispute. A couple of weeks ago, the strike spread to the liquor distribution branch, threatening the livelihoods of 7,500 restaurants and bars and thousands of workers in that sector. The restaurant sector is already struggling under this government's policies. Since 2019, half of food service businesses have become unprofitable. That's a 5-fold increase. And now they're asked to take on more uncertainty. It's not fair to them. Meanwhile, post-secondary students aren't getting their student loan payments because Student Aid BC is not doing the service it normally does. Some students are actually dropping classes because they can't afford their tuition and paying their rent at the same time. There's a backlog of young people who can't get their driver's license because they're not getting road tests at the moment. And now even criminal record checks are being delayed because the government employees who manage them are off the job on strike as they're able to do. I've heard from a daycare manager, HR manager in the Lower Mainland who can't hire new ECE, early childhood educators, because background checks are stalled. So it's leaving parents without childcare and putting that essential service at risk. There are actually workers today that are without a paycheck because of this. You need a criminal record check every 5 years in the early childhood education sector. And there are actually now ECE workers that are waiting in the queue, and now they're not getting their paycheck. That is unfair, and it's unjust to these workers. It doesn't end there, Madam Speaker. Our nonprofits and volunteer organizations, from youth sports leagues to Big Brothers and Sisters, rely on these same criminal record checks. When these stop, so do programs that support our children and families. As Conservatives, we support higher wages and fairness for every British Columbian. But the reality is that NDP mismanagement has led to layoffs in construction and the resource sector where I live in Prince George. It's frozen public sector frontline service wages. And it's led to an economy that can't sustain this government spending. Let's look at where we're at right now. Debt to GDP from this government's budget will be on track to reach 35% by 2028. Total debt will expand to reach $208 billion by that time. So today, we're paying $5.2 billion in debt interest payments, and I don't even want to think about what that number is going to be in 2028. Enough is enough. This government always seems to find money for its friends, the insiders, the consultants, and the politically connected. But let's put cuts in that area on the table, at the bargaining table. This government should do that today to find money for frontline workers. The government ministers keep saying that the best deals are negotiated at the bargaining table, yet their own bargaining team showed up 3 hours late to bargaining with the BCGEU. That is disrespectful to them and not fair.
Thank you, member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the member for Burnaby East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm thrilled to stand before you today to recognize not just a powerful movement happening across Canada, but a remarkable woman whose courage, advocacy, and presence are transforming what representation truly looks like. Today, I want to lift up Jacqueline Martin, a constituent of Burnaby East, a talented yoga instructor, a fierce advocate for accessibility and inclusion, and a person who lives with epilepsy. Jacqueline embodies resilience. She embodies grace, but not in the way pageants of the past have measured it. Her grace comes from her power, the kind of power that chooses to show up, to speak up, and to carve space where few have ventured before. For years, Jacqueline has worked with Epilepsy BC, not only as an advocate, but as a living, breathing example of what it means to thrive with a disability. Her voice has helped countless individuals feel seen, heard, and capable, including young people growing up today who are navigating their own journey with disability. But Jacqueline's story doesn't end there. She's now bringing that same passion, that same fight for inclusion into an industry that many still think of in outdated, narrow terms, the world of pageantry. Let's be honest, when most people hear the word pageant, their minds go to tiaras, sparkles, and gowns, and limited ideals of beauty. But this is changing, and Revolutionary Pageants is leading the charge. This year marks the inaugural launch of Revolutionary Pageants in British Columbia, an international non-discriminatory pageant system that embraces this government's values of acknowledging diversity, equitable policies, toward, oh my gosh, my hair is in my face, to build towards inclusion and respect. In this system, your age, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and disability are not barriers, they are strengths. Pageantry has become broader, and it is challenging the way society views women, adopting ideals that allow people who would have never considered pageantry to envision themselves in that space. It is focused on people being measured by their impact, their voice, their community engagement, and their drive to empower others. And Jacqueline Martin is the embodiment of that shift. Crowned as Miss Canada Revolutionary Purpose 2025-2026, Jacqueline is using her title not as a platform for personal gain, but as a microphone to amplify underrepresented voices. She is proof that leadership doesn't always come in a business suit or in a boardroom. Sometimes leadership wears a sparkling crown, and it wields it with purpose. She joins an extraordinary cohort of queens and kings this year. Neville Chand, Mr. Friendship 2025, Misha Singh Tiara, Miss Teen Earth Canada 2025, Arshdeep Thind, Miss Supranational 2026, Jaya Tiara, Miss Eco British Columbia 2026, and Julianne Nia, Miss Eco Canada 2025. Each of them is redefining what pageantry can be: community service, environmental justice, mental health awareness, disability advocacy. The crown is no longer the goal, it's the tool. Jacqueline has spoken openly about how pageantry in Canada needs more support. Too often, the work kings and queens do for our communities goes unnoticed. Let us be clear, it is time we change that. It is time we recognize pageantry for what it's becoming, a space of empowerment, of belonging, and social change. It's not about fitting in, it's about showing up as your whole self and defining who you are for yourself so others can be inspired to be themselves too. Jacqueline, sister, thank you. Thank you for your advocacy, your leadership with Epilepsy BC, your courage in sharing your story, and your unwavering belief that inclusion isn't a favor, it's a right. You are an inspiration to me and to young people living with disabilities everywhere, but also to everyone who has ever been told that they don't belong in the spotlight. Today, I'm proud to shine that spotlight directly on you. Here's to revolutionary pageants, here's to the revolution in representation, and most importantly, here's to you, Jacqueline Martin. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, according to the order paper, the House will continue second reading of Bill number M214, entitled Firefighters Health Act, for continuing discussion. Recognizing the member from West Kelowna Peachland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise as the MLA representing my constituents in West Kelowna Peachland and as the critic for Public Safety and Solicitor General in full support of a bill that reflects not just common sense, but deep respect. Respect for the people who face extraordinary danger to protect the rest of us. Bill M214, the Firefighters Health Act, brought forward by my colleague, the member for Langley Walnut Grove, is about ensuring our firefighters, whether they fight house fires, car fires, or wildfires, get the health protections they deserve. They don't ask for much. They show up when lives are on the line. They carry the weight of tragedy, risk, and trauma, and they do it again and again. The very least we can do, the bare minimum, is protect their health. I've personally fought wildfires. I've seen up close what these brave men and women go through in the most extreme conditions, working endless hours in the heat, the smoke, the stress. They're often far from home, sleeping rough, running on adrenaline and little else. The work is punishing physically and mentally. But what we don't often talk about are the invisible dangers, the ones that linger long after the flames are out. The smoke from wildfires is filled with particulate matter and toxic chemicals. We breathe it in even kilometers away. But imagine breathing that in every day, all day, for weeks at a time. Wildfire firefighters are exposed to those hazards at levels we still don't fully understand. And when they get sick, when the years of exposure finally take a toll, we cannot pretend we didn't know this was coming. As a police officer, I have responded to many fires, not just wildfires, but structure fires and car fires. I've been on the ground at emergency scenes with firefighters, watching them put themselves between danger and the public. The thing that sticks with me is how many threats they face beyond just the fire itself. Take car fires. It's not just the flames or the chance of an explosion. It's the smoke, thick, black, oily smoke filled with burning plastic, fuel, rubber, synthetic fibers, polymers, and metals. When these materials burn, they release toxic compounds, some of them known carcinogens. Firefighters run directly into that cloud. And then there's what happens after the fire. The off-gassing. I've stood over 100 meters away from a fire scene 2 or 3 days later, guarding a crime scene, and I could still smell the chemical stink in the air. That smell, that's still dangerous. That's still toxic. Imagine being the one who actually walked through it, breathed it in, carried it on your skin and on your gear. That's the reality for firefighters every single day. And let's not forget the mental health toll. Firefighters are routinely exposed to trauma, death, injury, destruction, tragedy. They carry those images long after the job is done. PTSD, depression, anxiety, these are real, common consequences of a life spent running toward danger. But how often do we stop to ask, are they okay? This bill doesn't just call for physical health screenings, it calls for mental health assessments too. A vital step toward acknowledging that the wounds we can't see are just as important as the wounds we can. Madam Speaker, I know firefighters whose lives were saved because of screening programs. They were lucky. The cancer was caught early. They're alive today because someone thought ahead. But I also know others who weren't so lucky, who developed cancer or chronic illness after years of service and received little or no help from the government. No support, no recognition. They were left to fight not just the disease, but the system. This is unacceptable. We are better than that, or at least we should be. We call firefighters heroes because they are, but words aren't enough. We ask them to stand between us and disaster. We count on them when homes are burning, when lives are at risk, when our forests are in flames. We trust them to show up, and they do, every time. But when the tables turn, when they face health crises because of the risks they took for us, we cannot look the other way. This bill is our chance to act, not just with praise, but with policy. It's our duty to ensure they are protected with the same seriousness and urgency that they show when protecting us. Madam Speaker, this is not a political issue. This is not a left versus right debate. This is a question of values, of duty, and of fairness. Every member of this House, regardless of party, region, or background, has benefited from the bravery of firefighters, and every one of us has a responsibility to stand up for them. I call on every single member of this legislature to support Bill M214. Let us not be remembered as the politicians who praised our heroes in speeches but ignored their suffering in silence. Let us instead be remembered as the ones who acted, who protected those who protect us, who stood up when it mattered. Our firefighters never hesitate to answer the call. Today, let's prove that neither do we. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the member from Ladysmith Oceanside.
Good morning, Honourable Speaker, fellow members. It's nice to see all of you back. I want to start by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt Nation, known as the Lekwungen-speaking people, and I am grateful to them for their stewardship of this land since time immemorial. And I am pleased today to rise to respond to Bill 214, and there is no better place to start my response than by commending the work that British Columbia firefighters do each and every day. My riding of Ladysmith Oceanside is represented entirely by volunteer/paid-on-call firefighters. And that's something that astonishes me each and every day when you think of the critical and important work that firefighters do across British Columbia. These folks are doing it as volunteers. In small communities like the ones I represent, they are almost always the first responders to any emergency. After arriving to find people that they are there to support, it's often friends or family members because of the nature of the small communities, or perhaps the structure that they are there to save is that of a family or a friend. Again, in my riding, they're doing this on a volunteer basis. My respect and admiration for the firefighters of the Ladysmith Oceanside riding and all across British Columbia is immense. And because these are small communities, many of those firefighters are actually my friends. They're the parents or siblings of my children's friends. They're my neighbors. My neighbor is the retired fire chief of my community. He is one of the most immensely hearted people on the planet. He just the other day plowed my driveway and fixed all the grades that happened over the summer just because he had the time, and he's a really great guy. In the spring, the professional firefighters associations were here for an awareness and lobby day. And I learned a lot about the issues that Bill M214 is hoping to address. And I was grateful for the time that the firefighters took to explain their personal experiences with various job-related physical and mental health issues. I remember one firefighter in particular who I just got reacquainted with at the UBCM last week, sharing his journey with job-related cardiac disease. After facing cardiac disease and open heart surgery, he is now back at his job. And to me, this demonstrates the dedication and the passion of firefighters. It's more than a job or a career, it is a life calling. And despite the known risks, firefighters continue to serve British Columbians. It's very humbling. The work that firefighters do is dangerous, and it can have serious impacts on their physical and their mental health. And we must do everything that we can to support them, because that is what they do for us in some of our darkest hours. After that lobby day, I did begin to ask around how we can ensure that firefighters can and do feel supported in the important work that they're doing. And I was glad to hear that we are actively working on the issues that they were lobbying for. Because when I hear stories like the one I heard from that firefighter who has returned to work despite facing job-related cardiac disease, I feel compelled to act. And I was pleased to not only learn that we are actively working on these issues alongside the Professional Firefighters Association, but also to learn the work that we have done since taking office. The member from West Kelowna Peachland just stood and said it's time to act. So let's take a look at what action looks like. When the NDP formed government in 2017, there was a limited number of illnesses that were listed as presumptive for firefighters: heart injury and disease, and only 10 types of cancer. Thanks to the tireless efforts of the BC Professional Firefighters Association and our work since 2017, we have amended the Workers' Compensation Act to add new presumption for PTSD and other mental health conditions for firefighters. That was followed in 2019 by changes to expand the cancer, heart disease, and mental health disorder presumptions to wildfire fighters, fire investigators, firefighters working for First Nations and Indigenous organizations. Our government has continued to listen to the BC Professional Firefighters Associations and their concerns about other types of cancer, and in 2022, several more types of cancer were added to the list of presumptions for firefighters. There are now 18 types of cancer, along with heart injuries and disease, that are recognized as illnesses that firefighters have an increased risk of developing. All of this is good work and it's important work, but as we heard from the professional firefighters, it is not yet enough and the work must continue. The Minister of Labour is an ardent supporter of this work and is leading the charge on necessary changes to the Workers' Compensation Act and the expansion of occupational disease presumption. Also leading the work on the health side is the Minister of Health, who has already directed BC Cancer to review the issue of early screening criteria for firefighters, recognizing the unique risks that they face. But our work is not done, and we must continue, and we are continuing to meet regularly with the BC Professional Firefighters Association to hear their perspectives and understand their concerns. This bill calls for a plan for health screening and a report with potential recommendations, if any, on prescribed occupational disease that is then tabled to the Legislative Assembly. It recognizes that a review of relevant medical or scientific evidence or information is vital to this work, and there is considerable activity that is already being coordinated at the national level. Our work must be undertaken in conjunction with that work. The National Framework for the Prevention and Treatment of Cancers linked to firefighting committed the federal government to lead activities in areas identified by firefighters. This includes the relevant medical and scientific research which this bill refers to. For example, the federal government will establish a national firefighter cancer registry led by Statistics Canada to track health outcomes over time. They will initiate targeted research on cancers linked to firefighting and build scientific evidence for underrepresented subpopulations of firefighters. BC is an active participant on this national advisory group. Our government is already actively engaged in this work in consultation with workers, with firefighting employers, and local government representatives and health experts. So my hope is that all of this is considered at the committee stage and that this bill, doesn't slow down the work that is already happening, the action that we are already taking. Every single member of this House places a great value on the work that firefighters do in our communities. They are first responders, they fight fires, their charitable work raises and strengthens communities. Firefighters and their contributions are woven into the fabric of the community life all across British Columbia. And I look forward to continuing our work to support the health and safety of firefighters in British Columbia. Thank you.
Recognizing the member from Kamloops North Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bill 214, the Firefighters Health Act, is a piece of legislation that every British Columbian should look at with both pride and scrutiny. Firefighters are the backbone of our emergency response system, men and women who run towards danger while the rest of us run away. From the BC Conservative perspective, supporting the health and well-being of firefighters is not just good politics, it's a moral duty. The bill's central purpose, establishing a mandatory health screening program for firefighters and reviewing the list of recognized occupational diseases, is a step in the right direction. We know firefighters are exposed to dangerous toxins, carcinogens, and traumatic stress. Early detection of cancer and mental health challenges can save lives and reduce long-term health costs. Conservatives have long championed preventive care and frontline investment rather than bureaucratic waste. But while the intentions of Bill 214 are commendable, the details matter as well. Too often we see a provincial government make promises that sound good in a press release but fall apart in practice. The bill gives ministers 9 months to design a health screening plan in consultation with firefighters and medical associations, yet no assurances that a small or volunteer fire department, which makes up a big chunk of the firefighting in this province, will have equal access to these programs. For a government that claims to be a champion of fairness, that's an unacceptable oversight and needs to be addressed. BC Conservatives believe that every firefighter, whether it's a full-time Vancouver firefighter or a volunteer in Vanderhoof, they all deserve the same standard of protection. A true commitment to firefighter health must include a dedicated funding stream, accessible screening in smaller communities, and strong data privacy safeguards. Without these guarantees, we risk creating yet another layer of bureaucracy that benefits administrators more than the people on the front lines. Another strength of this bill lies in the review of the Workers' Compensation Act and occupational disease presumptions. We fully support updating these provisions in lines with modern science. However, that review must be transparent and independent. The government cannot be allowed to quietly water down recommendations behind closed doors. The process must be involved open consultation with our firefighting associations, medical experts, nonpartisan committees, and not have just hand-picked advisory groups. At its core, Bill 214 recognizes some fundamentals. The people who protect us deserve protecting themselves. But Conservatives also recognize that a good law is more than a noble idea. It's a plan that works in real world. It must be practical, affordable, and accountable, and every dollar should be spent wisely, not just with red tape. In summary, we support Bill 214 and will work to make this law. We want to ensure that it delivers real results for every firefighter in this province, urban or rural, career or volunteer. This bill can make a lasting difference if government moves beyond the talk and delivers actions that respect both first responders and taxpayers alike. Ultimately, Bill 214 sends a powerful message. It tells firefighters that their service and sacrifice are valued not just in words, but in policy. It moves BC towards a more modern, compassionate, and science-driven approach to occupational health and safety. Firefighters protect our communities every day. This legislation ensures that the province, in turn, protects them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the member for Langley Walnut Grove for bringing this important matter to the attention of this House. The Third Party Caucus has previously worked closely with the Professional Firefighters Association and introduced a private member's bill in 2024 that would have created provincial standards to transition away from protective uniforms and foams that contain poly and perfluoroalkyls, PFAS, and introduce consistent protocols for handling contaminated gear. On a personal level, I have an extended family member who is an urban firefighter and lives with the fear of work-related illness, particularly lung cancer, on a day-to-day basis. This bill aligns with our caucus position on the need for preventative measures in healthcare, including early detection screening, mental health assessments, and comprehensive physical examinations and testing, and in supporting and advocating for workers. We know that preventative healthcare isn't only the right thing to do morally, it's the right thing financially and keeps our communities safer too. Ensuring firefighters have access to the screening and healthcare that they need when they need it will ensure that people feel safe turning up to work and will reduce the burden on our health system that occurs when these diseases are found too late. Our third-party caucus recognizes that some of this work may already be underway, but welcomes interrogation at committee stage, and so will support this bill at second reading. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the member from West Vancouver Capilano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker and my fellow MLAs, I rise today to speak in strong support of Bill M214, the Firefighters Health Act. This legislation is about one simple but profound truth. Those who risk their lives to save ours deserve every measure of protection we can give them. I repeat, those who risk their lives to save ours deserve every measure of protection we can give them. Firefighters run toward danger when others would run away. They breathe in smoke and toxic chemicals, they endure extreme heat, and they carry the emotional burden of witnessing tragedy far too often. We know that this profession carries risks far beyond the fire itself. Cancer, mental health struggles, and long-term occupational diseases are among the silent consequences of their service. Let me offer an analogy. Imagine, if you will, that the very chairs we sit in right here in this chamber today, day after day, were made of a carcinogenic material. We may not notice it today or tomorrow, but each hour we sit here, our risk of developing cancer increases. Would we say to ourselves, well, replacing the seats is too expensive, so let's just leave things as they are? Of course not. We would demand immediate action to remove the hazard because our health and our lives are worth far more than the price of new furniture. And yet, when firefighters step into their workplace every day, they are effectively sitting in these very chairs. The cumulative exposure to carcinogens, to trauma, to occupational hazards is real, and it is deadly. We cannot, in all good conscience, ignore it. A previous speaker outlined as possible future plans, but those are too nebulous to rely on or even hope for. We have laid out a bill that is clear, proactive, and vital. We have done the hard work for this government. What does it say? Regular early detection cancer screening so that hidden illnesses don't go unnoticed until it's too late. Comprehensive physician examinations and mental health assessments because the toll on body and mind is inseparable. Laboratory testing on a consistent schedule so firefighters aren't left guessing about their health. An update requirement every 5 years, ensuring the plan stays current with science and medicine. And importantly, changes to the Workers' Compensation Act so that occupational diseases are recognized for what they are, the cost of service to the public. What this present government has provided so far was a start, but it is not enough. Our provisions would apply not just to community firefighters, but to forest firefighters and volunteers too. Those who, after 10 years of service, have given a decade of their lives to protecting ours. I know that some of us may look at this and worry about costs, but I ask my colleagues, what is the cost of a firefighter's life? What is the value of early detection that allows a mother or father to come home to their children instead of being taken too soon by cancer? What price can we put on the peace of mind that comes with knowing we are caring for those who care for us? Every day, Firefighters risk their lives without hesitation. They don't stop at the door of a burning building to calculate the cost. They go in because they know someone's life is worth saving. This bill is our opportunity to do the same for them, to show that we value their courage, we value their sacrifice, and we value their humanity. Let us not be a government that hesitates when it comes to protecting our protectors. Let us pass the Firefighters Health Act, and in doing so, demonstrate that we are committed not just to valuing firefighters in words, but to saving their lives in action. Let us be a government that does not adhere to whipped party lines, but comes together to do the right thing, to follow our consciences, to unconditionally support our firefighters, to put lives before dollars, and to show our thanks in action rather than empty words. I urge each and every one of us to do the right thing and support Bill M214 Firefighters Health Act. Thank you.
Recognizing the member from Coquitlam Maillardville, and you've got about 5 minutes before the mover closes debate. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here today, especially because this last weekend I was privileged to be able to attend our firefighters' long service medal ceremony in our city, and to be able to be there to see their families, to see them, to see their community, to see their coworkers, appreciate them for the work that they do, the danger they face, and the service that they provide to all of us. And especially because I was surprised to see the very retired, very happily retired Captain Steve Farina there. Many of you will have met Captain Farina because he is a powerful advocate for firefighters' mental health, and was in fact there for the 2023 announcement when mental health for firefighters support was announced. He is an enormous value to our community. Even though he has moved away and left us, he came back for a visit. And you could see in the room when Steve was speaking, not just the joy that people get from seeing him, but the respect that they have for him. And they have that respect because Steve put tremendous amounts of time and energy into advocating for the mental health of firefighters across this province, but specifically in our community. Steve worked on standing up peer support teams, making sure that the people that had the experience of being a first responder, of being a person who runs into danger, being sure that they're the ones to be the first to look around the room and check with our colleagues and ask them how they're doing, and look into whether or not they need support, to make sure that no one is ever alone in that dark moment after the shift is over and the night has been very, very hard. And so his work has been recognized here in the province and nationally. And even though he's retired, Steve continues on because this is a fight that Steve will continue to advocate for his friends, his colleagues, his neighbors, and not just within the fire service, for all first responders. Steve will continue. And we will miss him, but like all good organizations, the firefighters aren't just served well by Steve. The firefighters in my community have been very powerful advocates to me, asking for the good work that's been started to continue. They want more firefighters to be able to receive some of the benefits that they have. They want there to be organized increasements in testing. They want what we all want, is they want safety. And they really appreciate the advocacy that we do on their behalf. They appreciate the respect that they've been shown. And they also understand that the work will be ongoing. The BC Professional Firefighters Association continues to work with the British Columbia government to make sure that any changes that are brought in are well thought out, well researched, and will be to the benefit of all the firefighters in our firefighting community. And I would like to, before we close out this debate, I would like to ensure that we recognize the families of firefighters. They are, when I was in that room for the medal ceremony, you could see the shine and the love in the eyes of the people who support them, who wait for them to come home, and who are the reason that they come to work every day. The firefighters serve bravely and honorably, but their families also serve. So I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this bill today, and I look forward to seeing our firefighters in the community again, and when we make further announcements about their care and support. Thank you.
The member for Langley Walnut Grove closes debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is good to be back, and it is good to start this session with good work that we should be spending our time on. I spent much of my summer break touring different regions of this province and talking to many firefighters. And one theme was consistent. It's time. It's time for a comprehensive plan, and the time is now. In preparation for this closing statement, I re-watched the members from across the aisle on their debate of this bill and listened closely with messages just received now. And although they made it clear that they will not support the bill, although we've gotten some mixed messaging this morning, I am still going to clear up a few things in hopes of urging reconsideration. The members opposite have gone into great details of what their government has done for firefighters since 2017, and this is what I heard. In 8 years, there's been 3 rounds of changes, 3 rounds of consultations and negotiations, requiring dozens of hours of work for all involved, including ministers, staff, firefighters, and union members. I also heard a member say that we didn't need another report, while 3 sentences later say that the Minister of Health was instructed to get a report and is waiting for information from BC Cancer. It's been a year. And to clarify, Bill M214 isn't a report. It's asking for a plan for firefighters. But what I didn't hear from members opposite were the following. Number 1, a guarantee that firefighters wouldn't have to consistently come to the government to ask for changes and updates as the industry changes and as their risks change. Bill M214 says that every 5 years, all stakeholders will get together to review and revise the Plan and Compensation Act as necessary. That is efficiency in action and is common sense. Number 2, I didn't hear that after all these years, after all these engagements with firefighters, any changes to the length of service have been made. Other than one cancer on the current list, all other identified cancers require 15 to 20 years of service. In 2025, after all the information and statistics available to cancer rates, this is unacceptable. For a government that proclaims to rely on science and science-based decisions, it's failed to act on readily available science with its speed. Number 3, I never heard when changes are going to occur. This government has a history of failed campaign promises and likes to reinvent the wheel when others have done the work already. Bill M214 puts a clock on getting that work done, 9 months. Number 4, the member opposites have stated all things that they have done for firefighters in 2018, 2019, 2022, except they seem to have missed an update in 2024. And I'm curious why this change for firefighters was missed. But I'm assuming it's because it is something that was in direct opposition to what firefighters wanted. In fact, they even warned against it and were still ignored. And that was changes to the building code that allows for single egress exits up to 6-story apartment buildings, another unacceptable obstacle for firefighters. Although Bill M214 pertains to physical health of firefighters and doesn't cover building code, you can be sure that when our party forms government, we will address this issue for firefighters, and hopefully that is before anyone gets injured or dies. You know, it was last spring in 2024 that a member of the Green Party brought forward a bill to phase out PFAS, a harmful chemical from all firefighter gear. It was in the fall of 2024 that both the NDP and the Conservatives promised to address the presumptive cancer list. But it was in the spring of 2025 that a Conservative brought forward a bill to finally address a health plan, presumptive cancers, and updates to the Workers' Compensation Act. It appears that only 2 of the 3 parties mentioned are serious about addressing the health of firefighters with any sense of urgency. It is now time that this NDP government act without haste and adopt Bill M214.
Members, the question is second reading of Bill number M214, entitled Firefighters Health Act. Those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate nay. Motion is carried. Pursuant to Standing Order 84A, subsection 1, the bill stands committed to the Select Standing Committee on Private Bills and Private Members' Bills. Honourable members, according to the order paper, we will look to the member next on the list of precedents to move their item of business. Recognizing the member for Burnaby East.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move motion 38, standing in my name on the order paper, that this House condemns the intolerant views of the Association for Reformed Political Action, also known as ARPA, including its harmful discrimination against transgender people, its belief that homosexuality is immoral, and its explicit policy goal of restricting abortion access in British Columbia. Madam Chair, British Columbia is a place where we respect rights equally, regardless of gender identity or sexual orientation, and where we respect a woman's right to make their own reproductive choices. In fact, the issue of a woman's right to choose was settled long ago, so I thought, and that right universally respected in BC. In fact, since 2005, this country has enshrined protections for gender identity and expression in our human rights laws. But because of the actions of the BC Conservative Caucus, this progress must be defended. And that's why members of the public and members of this House, including myself, were shocked when the member for Chilliwack North brought an organization to this building actively promoting that, quote, homosexuality is immoral and morally wrong. That's from ARPA's own executive director, from their own material that they brought to the legislature. They also believe that, quote, homosexuality and transgenderism are disordered. They are an organization that wants to end the federal ban on the documented harmful and sinister practice of conversion therapy. And they are actively lobbying MLAs in this building to restrict abortion access for women. I find it astounding, shocking, and hurtful that these issues are being brought back into this building by the opposition and are even a matter of debate. The member for Chilliwack North, who hosted the organization in April, had many of her colleagues join her in welcoming ARPA to the legislature, including the leader of the opposition. At the event, the member said, quote, what ARPA has done is given a voice to the ills of society that are so harmful to many. Many of their stances align with our common sense approach as the Conservative Party of BC, end quote. Is ending a woman's right to choose common sense? Is putting queer kids in school at risk common sense? And dictating who someone can love common sense? While the member for Chilliwack North and some in the opposition are trying to bring these hateful and harmful issues back, I know there are those that do not share their views. That's why I believe this motion is so important to bring forward. These hateful views have been brought back for debate by the opposition, and so the question must be asked. Do the individual members condemn harmful discrimination against transgender people and the belief that homosexuality is immoral? Does each member condemn the policy goal of stopping a woman from making their own reproductive choices? Madam Chair, it is shocking that this is even coming back for debate. Let me be absolutely clear. I support my friends, my family, and community, no matter who they love. That's their choice, and I support all the members of the trans community. And I can't believe in this day and age, I have to say, I respect a woman's right to choose and put that on the record. But the member for Chilliwack North and some of her colleagues are trying to bring that debate back too. These issues shouldn't be a matter of opinion. Human rights should not be up for debate. I met a young woman who told me she was out with her girlfriend for a night out on the town, of course minding her own business, and she got yelled at and intimidated by a group of people on the street. Why? Because she was holding her partner's hand. That meant that their safety was at risk. That was heartbreaking to hear, but sadly, stories like this happen all the time. For some reason, some people just can't let others live the way that they want. And that's who ARPA is, and the people who support them are. They're the harassers in that story. The things that they stand for are about not letting people be who they are, not letting them love who they love, and not letting them make the choices for themselves. I wish I was there that night to stand with that young woman and her partner. And so I'd like to say something directly to everyone out there who is affected by these hateful views, every member of the trans community, every person who loves whoever they love, no matter the gender, and every woman trying to make a difficult choice on whether to have a child or not. I'm with you, and the members of my caucus are with you. When hate and intolerance surfaces, we will speak out against it. I would hope every member of this House will do the same. And so I hope you will all join me in supporting this motion to condemn hate, condemn discrimination, and condemn restricting a woman's right to choose.
Thank you, member.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Recognizing the member for Peace River South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's great to be back, and welcome to everyone back to this place of honor. I'm here to speak around something that was made very clear to me in the first sitting of this session in the spring. And that was where, honestly, I felt that I was admonished, and perhaps some would even say chastised, in partaking in what was described at that time by a senior member from the opposite side of the aisle as being political gamesmanship. And in this particular case, I believe that what we're facing here is a thinly veiled political trap, and I will call it for what it is. British Columbians expect this House to use its precious legislative time wisely, to debate ideas that make life better for families, workers, and communities across our province. Yet once again, we see the government choosing division over direction. Instead of focusing on fixing real, everyday challenges British Columbians face, we are spending valuable time on a motion designed to score political points. This motion does nothing to strengthen our economy, improve health care, make our streets safer. It is a distraction. It is a deliberate one, and British Columbians see right through it. The government has decided that political theatre is more important than real solutions. While they spend time condemning organizations to create headlines, emergency rooms across the province are closing their doors. I can't recall how many went down this weekend. It's of significant concern to everyone. Wait times now exceed regularly 12 hours. 142,000 people who sought emergency care in British Columbia last year left before ever seeing a doctor. That's not leadership. That's a crisis. The real emergency that British Columbians want to talk about are not motions designed to divide us further. Let's talk about our schools. This government promised, not once, but repeatedly, to eliminate portables within one term. Instead, we have children learning in stacked double-decker portables in places like Surrey. That's not progress. That's failure, wrapped in a spin. When parents see these images, they don't see a government focused on inclusion or equality. They see a government that's forgotten about classrooms, teachers, and families. On the issue of addiction and safety, this government's priorities are dangerously misplaced. They decided that flooding the streets with toxic drugs was somehow the compassionate thing to do. But what about compassion for those struggling to recover? Where were the supports? British Columbians want to see action that save lives and rebuild communities, not experiments that turn neighborhoods into open drug zones. Very importantly, let's talk about the economy. That's where this government's record is undeniable. A $6 billion surplus when taking government has become a $14 billion deficit. Our province at the time had no operating debt. Now the government is on track to drive it up to $24 billion, creating a total debt approaching $208 billion with a B. Infrastructure projects are billions over budget and years behind schedule. The Premier tells us he's fighting for BC jobs, but then his government blocks Canadian shipyards from bidding on contracts, choosing instead to have ships built in China. Imagine that. We're told to buy BC, but this government buys Beijing. And while they boast about promoting BC projects overseas, a company here at home...
Can I just ask you to redirect towards the subject for the motion? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Instead of today's performative debate, we could be discussing Bill 214, the Firefighters Health Act, a bill that would make a real difference for those who run into danger.
Member, we've concluded the vote for Bill 214. So to the subject of the motion that's been moved by the member. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I have very little time left, I will close with a simple statement that, again, many in this House would recognize that I don't have as much political experience as many in this House do. This is, again, I will very clearly recognize on the record that I see this as a political trap. I don't see this as a valuable use of the precious, precious legislative time that we are here to do the work of the people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the member from Surrey Cloverdale.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. I'm going to have to disagree with the member from Peace River South. Because in fact, I cannot think of a better use of time in this chamber than to stand up for the rights of British Columbians. In April, the opposition, under the leadership of the member for Nechako Lakes, invited the Association for Reform Political Action, or ARPA, to speak in the Hall of Honour in this legislature. ARPA is a group that is rooted in religious convictions, and let me be clear, Canadians, including British Columbians, have every right to express their religious beliefs. Our charter protects that freedom, and it's a cornerstone of what makes our country strong. Faith can inspire compassion, community, and I deeply respect those who live by their principles peacefully. I also understand that many people have genuine concerns about what they see as an erosion of sex-based rights, things like women's spaces, sports, and privacy. Others worry about children being medically transitioned without enough safeguards, and these are valid questions. In a complex world, it's okay to want transparency. It's okay to want evidence-based policies and open dialogues to address them. We need those conversations to build understanding and find solutions that protect everyone. But what isn't okay is discrimination. Using those concerns as a veil to deny dignity, safety, or rights to British Columbians. ARPA doesn't just advocate their own views. They actively campaign against the fundamental rights of others. They oppose same-sex marriage, seek to restrict abortion access, and undermine the dignity of transgender individuals. When a political caucus invites such a group into the heart of our government, not as private citizens, but as influencers in a public forum, it sends a concerning message and elevates voices that aim to erode the equality and protections guaranteed under the law. In a democracy like ours, the Hall of Honour isn't a private clubhouse. It's a symbol of representation for every citizen. By hosting ARPA, my former colleagues weren't just tolerating difference, they were endorsing a worldview that discriminates, that tells other British Columbians that their rights are up for debate. That erodes trust in our institutions, fosters divisions, and betrays the oath that we take as elected officials to serve everyone, not just those who share a particular faith or ideology. As elected officials, we must uphold the balance to protect religious freedoms, fiercely guarding against any encroachment on others' rights. But every British Columbian, regardless of faith, orientation, sex, gender, or background, deserves respect and true representation. And that means rejecting invitations that platform harm. Because when we don't, we weaken the fabric of our society. I've seen the strength in my riding, the harmony at interfaith gatherings, the pride in our multicultural communities, the resilience of families navigating these challenging times together. Friends, we've overcome so much. Wildfires, floods, a pandemic, and we'll overcome this too. Let's commit to a British Columbia where religious rights thrive alongside equality for all, where no one's dignity is sacrificed for another's dogma. That is the province that we all deserve. Let's build it together. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Recognizing the House Leader of the third party.
Thank you. This morning, I wish to speak strongly in support of the motion from the member for Burnaby East. Upholding human rights is not a distraction, as the member from Peace River South asserts. It is the foundation of our society, of our province. Upholding human rights is not a distraction, it is foundational. To start, I'd like to express my gratitude to the member opposite for raising this issue in the House. At a time when human rights are being eroded by short-sighted governments, it is as important as ever to stand up for the health and safety of our communities. I respect the right of all members of this House to have their own religious beliefs. I do not respect the right of any member to seek to enshrine their beliefs into law or to use them as a tool for spreading hate and disinformation. Gender-affirming care, safe abortions, and access to excellent health services save lives. Today, I join my colleagues in speaking out strongly against groups that are attempting to erode these essential forms of health care. If the past has taught us anything, it is that hatred and denial do not stop abortions or queerness, it only pushes them into the shadows. I want to be very clear with this House. Abortion is health care, and that all health care decisions, it is for a pregnant person in consultation with medical professions to make. That's where the decision gets made. It is most certainly not a decision that lobby groups nor members of this House should be anywhere near. Gender-affirming care is life-affirming care. It allows for transgender, two-spirit, and gender non-conforming people to live openly and authentically. Gender-affirming care has been found to improve mental health amongst trans and non-binary youth. When groups such as ARPA speak in opposition to human rights and basic health care, it can have immensely negative impacts on trans and non-binary youth and their families, and we can't have that happen. Effectively, it compounds the prejudice, the stigma, discrimination, and violence they already face. We must recognize the very real human harm caused by beliefs such as the ones perpetrated by ARPA that reinforce stigma and fuel discrimination. When an organization denies the humanity of others, It crosses a line and becomes a matter of public safety and public harm. A compassionate society cannot remain silent while harmful rhetoric seeks to erase the reality of others. These views are outdated, dangerous, and do not uplift or unite us. They only divide us, and we do not need division. We need unity. When hatred is normalized, we see a rise in suicide in trans and queer youth, and bodily harm or death from seeking unsafe medical procedures. The human toll of hatred is devastating. In recent years, hatred against the LGBTQIA+ community has risen dramatically. Safe spaces are disappearing in schools and in communities, and we cannot stand by and let our political spaces become one of them. Suggesting that the way a person lives their life or who they love is immoral is not free speech, it is hate speech. We cannot be in the business of giving space and therefore legitimacy to groups who perpetrate hate speech. People who work in this building, the British Columbians and tourists who come to see this space, people conducting meetings and business, all have the right to go about their day without encountering people espousing hate. Our work is to create the conditions where people are safe, free from discrimination and hatred, where people can fully participate in our society. We need to renew our commitment to fighting for inclusion and equity across our province and in every aspect of our society.
Member.
Thank you.
Recognizing the member from North Vancouver Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to a motion of profound importance to me. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I continue to speak on the lands of the Coast Salish people, here in Victoria, the Lekwungen, known as the Songhees and the Esquimalt, and in North Vancouver, the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish nations, from where I call home. I'm always grateful for their ongoing stewardship of the water, land, and world around us. Last spring, I was surprised to learn that a group of people who espoused a variety of beliefs that conflict with the rights of many members of our communities had come to the People's House to express their divisive, prejudicial, and to be quite frank, hateful opinions. They had a benign name, the Association for Reformed Political Action. However, their apparent goal was to influence government policy in a variety of ways, to encourage policy creation that was focused on diminishing the rights of women and members of our LGBTQS+ groups. Their materials advocate to defund abortion and availability of the abortion bill. They have a campaign to pass laws that protect children before birth and describe abortion as a grave human rights violation. In vitro fertilization was also a target, with this group wanting to have the process criminalized, with the following being published in a report: the practice of creating excess embryos, freezing embryos, destroying or discarding embryos, comedifying gametes, and intentionally severing children from their biological parents should be condemned in Canada. Parliament should enact a legislative scheme that bans these harmful activities and protects life from its very beginning. This is hurtful and hateful. Hurtful and hateful. I don't know if anybody knows of anybody that's done IVF and done the work and knows the results and loves those results, those children. Additionally, ARPA indicates that groups believe that couples with same-sex relationships and transgender identities deprive their children of the leadership, nurturing, and care that a fully male father and fully female mother provide. This belief is outlined in an article entitled, "How to Respond to Pride Month." Excuse me. Here we are in a country, province, and communities that overall profess to support human rights, recognize and embrace diversity, variety, and the right to choose. Choose who you are, who you love, and how you manage your body, amongst many, many other things. ARPA wants to restrict those choices to only the things that match their beliefs. Laws and legislations with ensuing policies and regulations are there to support people. In our government, we believe in lifting people up, strengthening everybody's ability to have a life of their choosing. Our government is not open to suggestions by those who advocate repression of specific groups of people. Shortly after the event, it was noted that a number of members of the opposition were also against the beliefs expressed by ARPA. The member from Surrey Cloverdale, Surrey White Rock, and Penticton Summerland had the strength of conviction to speak out against hosting ARPA. The member from Surrey Cloverdale was very clear by stating, "To see a group that, in my opinion, actively works against the rights of other British Columbians is not in line with what I want to see in the Hall of Honour." Whereas, in contrast, the opposition member from Chilliwack North was very supportive, saying, "What ARPA has done has given a voice to the ills of society that are so harmful to many. Many of their stances align with our common sense approach as the Conservative Party of British Columbia." She also said, among other things, "It's my honour and privilege to host ARPA." At least the members of our new fourth party and our other parties and our independents are very clear in where they stand, whether we all agree or not, whereas the opposition seems to be unsure of their stand on this event, as was noted earlier. To be very clear, these are not just opinions that are being tossed around for dinner table discussions. ARPA is comprised of people who truly want the government to criminalize a person's right to choose what happens with their body, the right to choose who they live with, and marry and raise a family with, things that have been fought for over decades and generations. Fairness, dignity, and equal rights for all, regardless of gender identity, sexual orientation, or personal health care choices.
Thank you, member.
Oh, I just want to say I believe and stand for it as our government. Thank you.
Recognizing the member for Peace River North.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise today and I wanted to talk about this motion and the fact that I agree with the member of Peace River South and the fact that we have better things to talk about in this House, that there are certain things that are already protected and that's not actually being argued right now. What was invited to the Hall of Honour was a guest group that is express an opinion. If I go and visit that, which I did, and see what they're about, am I now a terrorist? If I actually look at their information, am I now wrong to look at that information? It's the right to have freedom of speech. That's what this House is about. This isn't actually, their opinions aren't in this House right now. They're not actually in any of the bills. Right now in the North, I've got people dying because of the healthcare system. When we see the drug crisis, we see different organizations come in. You go and you see their viewpoint, whether or not you agree with them or disagree with them, you can leave. But it's about seeing the different perspectives in life and what different communities are about, what different organizations are about. And right now, this isn't about changing the current laws that we have. And I honestly feel like this is just another thing that is creating polarizations within our politics. And it's creating the ideological segregations that are just creating more issues. And I don't think that what is being brought forward is being challenged. I think that those rights are in place, and I respect those rights. But right now, I think that if we were to really focus on the main things of why we're here in this House, we've got those laid out in front of us. And that's why I'm here, is to bring forward the issues about my constituents. And that's why I'm here in this House, and I'll make this short and sweet, because that's what we should be focusing on. And right now, that incident, what was referred to, I honestly, it's either you go to it or you don't. If you don't like it, leave. There's a lot of different cultures and religions within this province. You can respect them. Or you might not like them, but it doesn't have to come into this house. It's not affecting our rights right now. I'm getting sick and tired of the polarization and the segregation that's happening and the division. It's one of the reasons why I don't like party politics, is because that's what it's becoming too much of. And you need to remember where you come from and your constituents that you represent, what their issues are. This isn't one of them. Thank you.
Recognizing the member for Kootenay-Monashee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to support this motion condemning the intolerant views of the Association for Reformed Political Action, or ARPA. I stand for diversity and inclusion. I stand for the freedom to love whom we choose. I stand for human rights. And I stand for Canada's long-established values of acceptance, dignity, and freedom for every Canadian. I take my responsibility as a member of this legislature very seriously. We have important work ahead to build a better British Columbia for the remainder of this term and for generations to come. For me, this is not some fluffy motion wasting our time. This motion goes to the very heart of that work. It is the foundation upon which all our efforts must rest. If we do not stand for love, diversity, and inclusion, if instead we allow hatred and division to take root, everything we strive to build together is doomed to collapse. I was raised Christian. I recognize the many positive contributions of Christianity that has bettered the fabric of our province. But I also know the fallibility of religious institutions of all kinds. And I know the sometimes appalling paths that they have taken. Let me be clear. I support Christians, I support Buddhists, I support Muslims, I support Hindus, I support Sikhs, whatever faith or belief system people choose. But I draw the line when religion is used as a shield for hatred. I will call out hatred every single time, and this is one of those times. ARPA has said, and I quote, as a Christian advocacy organization that adheres to the truths we believe are found in God's Word, it is not inconsistent then for us to state that we believe homosexuality is immoral. They also say, and I quote, ARPA believes homosexuality and transgenderism are disordered. Honourable Speaker, there is nothing disordered about being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or queer. What is disordered is believing that some British Columbians are less worthy of dignity and respect because of who they are or who they love. That is not faith, that is prejudice. And prejudice, when cloaked in religious language, does not become righteous. It remains harmful, it remains hateful, and it has no place in the values of our province. This is why this motion is so important. It is not an attack on faith or on anyone's personal beliefs. It is a stand against hatred and discrimination masquerading as religion. By supporting this motion, the House affirms that all British Columbians, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or whom they love, are entitled to dignity, respect, and equality under our laws. We are saying clearly that prejudice has no place in our communities, no place in our schools, no place in our workplaces. This is a declaration that love, inclusion, and human rights must guide the work of this legislature now and into the future. The work of this legislature cannot succeed if we turn a blind eye to hatred. It cannot succeed if we allow division to take root. Today, by supporting this motion, we choose love over fear. We choose inclusion over exclusion. We choose dignity over discrimination. We send a message to every British Columbian. Here in our province, you are valued. You are accepted. You are free to be yourself. Let us rise to this moment with courage and conviction. Let us affirm that hate has no home in British Columbia. I urge all members to support this motion. Stand up for the values that make our province truly great. Thank you, Speaker.
Recognizing the House Leader of the Fourth Party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to know if the member from Burnaby East considers the religious texts of British Columbians to be hateful and if they should be labeled as hate speech. Is the member proposing to label Muslims, Christians, Mormons, Orthodox Jewish British Columbians, and many more as intolerably hateful because of their personal religious beliefs? I certainly would not. In fact, what the member from Burnaby East is doing is trying to divide British Columbians that are perfectly happy coexisting with one another into baskets labeled as good and bad and hateful and tolerant. This is what real division looks like. Will the member interview all her constituents before meeting with them to ensure she only speaks with those who already share her own personal moral beliefs? Division and targeted smears do not become acceptable just because you use the word tolerance and inclusion. I believe all my constituents have the right to be represented in the legislature, and that is why I will be voting against this childish motion. Thank you.
Recognizing the member from Coquitlam, recognizing the member from Coquitlam-Yardville.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My deep gratitude to my colleagues who have stood to show that British Columbians support equal treatment under the law for all people. I'm certainly not going to specifically point to any one member, but I would say if you do not instinctively in your heart understand why it's so important for us to stand on this issue, perhaps you do not have a child whom this issue directly affects. And I would like to raise up my colleague from Burnaby East for the bright, burning flame that is her courage for bringing forward this motion. We have certainly seen in the last days that there are risks to speaking out on issues where we disagree and disagree passionately, and that there are people who are willing to use violence and intimidation to silence people who want to speak. And that's unacceptable. I know many of the members of this House would stand just as firmly against that as they have stood for people in British Columbia today. If I was there, I would hug you, but I'm not. And to us LGBTQIA+ British Columbians, I see you. We love you. You belong. And thank you also to all of the people of faith who have reached out to me over this last year, who have prayed so earnestly and communicated your views so full of heart and sincerity that you want peace and joy and success for all British Columbians, and you want equal treatment for them. My children and I often discuss the whys of the world. That is the incredible value of having 5 really dedicated little mini politicians in your kitchen. And I've been able to increase my understanding of Psychology 101 over this last year, because we always talk about the just world fallacy. The idea that it relates so much to the lack of compassion that we see for vulnerable people in our society. It's deep in us. It's in our genes, in the back of our heads, in the earliest part of us, to react so instinctively when we see people suffering. But there are issues that we cannot solve immediately. And for some people, there are problems that must be endured, and they cannot be quickly solved. And when that happens, humans naturally have a tendency to try and get ourselves out of that quandary, out of that tension between empathy and exhaustion, by flipping and blaming the person who is the sufferer. And the narrative in our hearts transforms. If you are suffering, you must deserve it. And you see this logic happen over and over when we are forced to confront the painful condition of infertility. I want to warn you, if you're someone who has experienced infertility, you may not want to listen to this next little bit because you've already heard it before. I guarantee it. Callous statements that children are a gift, often a gift from God. And if you can't conceive, well, that's all part of the plan, and you should just accept it. Receiving medical treatment, well, that goes against the plan too. And here in this House, we've had members who've welcomed a group who says that they're against many of the most powerful and effective treatments we have for infertility. They're against IVF. They want to disallow the use of donor gametes for assisted human reproduction. They refer to surrogacy as fracturing and reordering natural relationships, and that human procreation ought to take place within a committed heterosexual marriage. And those aren't just personal beliefs that they want to maintain. They're advocating to ban donor gametes by law. They want to prevent other British Columbians, other Canadians from having the right to practice medical health care and reproductive care as they see fit. This past summer, I was very privileged to be at the province's announcement that we were going to be funding IVF. And I want to emphasize that we want to make this province a better place for women and a more equitable place to live, not less. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Recognizing the Leader of the Fourth Party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last session, the member from Burnaby East, along with members of both the government and the official opposition, objected to the welcoming of a Christian organization inside the legislature. Many British Columbians from various religious faiths share the views of this organization. It's preposterous for these members to now propose a motion that condemns a significant portion of British Columbians simply because they don't share this member's radical opinions. Does the member truly think that only British Columbians who agree with her deserve to be represented in the legislature? What will be next? Will the Salvation Army be decried if invited to the House? Will she be saying that British Columbians are uninvited guests in their own province? In their own legislature? I stand up for every British Columbian, regardless of who they are or where they're from. Madam Speaker, if the member for Burnaby East truly believes she is an uninvited guest, well, then will you please ask her to leave? I will not be supporting this motion.
Seeing no further speakers, I'll invite the member for Burnaby East to close debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to take a moment to share how deeply grateful I am to the members on the opposite side who stood up and showed support, and many of my friends and colleagues over here and on the screen for standing up against homophobia, transphobia, and protecting a woman's right to choose. The opposition has said time and time again that they have the right to vote as they want, and I sincerely hope that today they will do just that. Standing up for people's rights and tackling the problems that people are facing aren't mutually exclusive. Every MLA should be able to do both. We can call out homophobia and protect choice at the same time while we tackle housing, affordability, and improvements to the healthcare system. Suggesting we can't do both is simply an excuse, and just so that they don't have to stand up for those rights. I denounce One BC, and I hope BC Conservative MLAs don't stand with them. Remember that each one of you have a trans, gay, lesbian, and other queer members of the community in your ridings. Each one of you have many women and people who can get pregnant in your riding. Are you going to advocate for all of them, or only the select constituents that you choose? This is not a political trap. It is not political football. It is human rights, and we have to and we must defend every single day the progress we've made. Otherwise, we will go back. And we are seeing that happen in places like the States. I urge each and every one of you to please consider voting in support of this motion. We do have to condemn the people that show up here that have hateful views, that want to practice intolerance and lobby for policy changes to stop people from making decisions for themselves. That's the crux of the issue, nothing else. I love people equally. I don't stand for any discrimination of a particular group because of their views, and especially legislating that into policy. It's why the Canadian Charter of Rights changed in 2005, and human rights were enshrined into policy. That's the reason. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we will go to the vote. And you've heard the question. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. The motion is carried. And division has been called. So pursuant to Standing Order 25, the division is deferred until 6 p.m. today. Government House Leader. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move that the House now adjourn. It's been a while.
Members, the question is adjournment of the House. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried. The House stands adjourned until 1:30 p.m. this afternoon.
Thank you.